and welcome to Your Creative Midlife. I'm Betsy Bush. Earlier this year, I talked with Graham Broyd, a banker turned author who told me about writing his first book, Backpack Jacket Surfboard, and how he connected with the publisher Advantage Press, his work on the manuscript with a team of editors that pushed him to deepen the story to connect with a wider readership while still keeping his distinctive storytelling voice. Well, the book launched in mid-August, and we have another episode with the formal launch before a packed house where many books were sold and signed. Now comes the hard part, selling the book. Graham, thank you so much for being here with me again on Your Creative Midlife. So tell me, how is it going? I think a lot of people think, I've written it, it's published, it's out in the world, I'm done. What do you say?
Well, first of all, it's lovely to be back, Betsy, and thank you for inviting me. It's been a journey. Mm-hmm. It's been a surprising journey. And I think for context, one has to know, I know nothing about this space. Right? I'm a first-time author. I have no background in the literary space. And so almost every week has been a new learning experience on how to get this book out there and to help with its sales process.
So you launched the book in your community, which was the Scarsdale Golf Club, filled to the brim with about 160 people from different facets of your life. You've had several different jobs in different companies. You have a wide circle of friends, etc. You even had baristas from your local Starbucks. And I think that says a lot about your gift for friendship, your interest in people, and that is something that's helping you sell the book or sell your story, getting people interested in you.
Yes, and I think my initial aspiration was to self-publish and send, because I didn't think anyone would buy it, send to 30 or 40 friends, 10 of whom I thought would buy it. Right? Now, I did aspire to sell it more broadly, but that more broadly was initially, let's see if I can sell 100. Right? Let's see if and of course that 100, where is that going? It's going to the network. Mm. It's going to the people who I know, who by knowing me and knowing the book is, stories about me, could be enticed to buy a copy. Mm-hmm. And the great skill that I'm trying to learn is to get it beyond there. But just a moment on that network at the start. So you have to recognize yourself. And I have become a walking, talking billboard for my book.
Be careful. People go, oh no, here he comes.
I think it's already at that stage, and I think there's a lot of books that one could write. If you write a fiction book, and it's about teenage vampires, right? Well. Yeah, how many of your friends are going to want to read that? Some may, but a lot are not have any interest. Or even if it's nonfiction, if I'd written a book on, running techniques, well, there's a group of people who are going to be interested in that, and a lot of are not. And maybe it's a little vain, but I actually think, the book that I've written, for almost everyone who I meet, would enjoy it. And it's broad enough in its themes that, and maybe I'm wrong, but so far the experience is that actually turns out to be true.
Well, this was one of the things your editors were helping you do, was to broaden the appeal of your story. So it isn't just, this sounds just like Graham, right? So run down the different things that you've been doing. You had your big launch party in mid-August, and then you've done some other things too.
Yeah, so there's things that I've done, and there's also things that the publisher's done, right? And maybe we should address them a little bit separately. Mm-hmm. So the things that I've done is at the instruction, really, of the publisher. If I wanted this to sell, their view was if you stick this book in a bookstore, because it's not such a specific genre, no one is going to find that book and buy it. But if you go out with the book and you tell people what the book is about, they will buy it. So get out there. And so the kind of things that I've done is I've done podcasts. Right? This is not my second or third. Right? I have one tomorrow, as well as today. I have done book launch events, both across the country and internationally now.
That's right. You did one in London.
I did one in London that was
ago.
just fantastic, and I loved it. Again, my network, right? This wasn't literary people from newspapers. This was my network, but effectively everyone there either had the book or bought the book, and those people, I know, in many circumstances, are sharing their love of the book with other people. So that is effective. I've been to Atlanta. I'm going to Dallas. I'm going to Yorktown in New York next week. I'm doing Scarsdale Public Library in the new year. I'm doing a book club in 3 weeks' time in Eastchester. So getting out there, right? Just getting out there in front of people. And getting the word of mouth, selling by word of mouth, right? That's really what I'm doing, and being with people and the book. So that's one of the things I'm doing.
You told me something very interesting when you were beginning to do this, which was the number of books that are sold versus the number of authors.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you would?
Well, I think what you're angling at is published books and self-published book numbers, right? Which are staggering, right? So a million books published a year by professional publishers, a million books a year in America, and then another 2 or 3 million self-published, right? 3 or 4 million. I worked it out for whatever reason that on a normal working day, that's 15,000 new books. Wow. Entering the marketplace a day, every working day in America. I mean, it's just a staggering number.
It's a staggering number, yeah. But when you break it down, you think how many of those professionally published books are like the million sellers, right? Like the top list. What Dan Brown now has a book out, a new book out.
It's a real pyramid. It's a shocking pyramid, right?
Yes.
So these are the numbers as it has been explained to me. So 50% of those published by a publisher books, of the million, where publishers put their own money down, expecting it, 50% of those sell less than 12 copies. Less than 12 copies. Think about that.
Okay, Graham, how many have you sold so far?
Well, we've sold more than 12.
Yeah.
Right? So
You've sold hundreds.
Yeah.
You've sold hundreds.
And I'll come back to that just 1 second, right? So 90% of those books, right, sell less than 1,000, right? So only 10% sell more than 1,000 of published books in a year. And you recognize within that top 10%, as you say, the Dan Browns, right? And people who will sell 1 million books, right? So everyone is looking for that big sale. Now, numbers are actually not as simple to track as you would think, because you're selling, audio books, Kindle books, paperback books, on Amazon, through independent bookstores that are not registered with the people who pick up the book numbers. It's actually more complicated than I imagine. It is very evident at this point that we will go over the 1,000 book mark. We may already be over the 1,000 book mark. So shocking as this is to me to say this, we will be in the top 10% of all published books in the United States in 2025. Despite only releasing it in the middle of August, right? So I only have 4.5 months to hit that number. and with, as I said earlier, with an aspiration to send it to 30 or 40 people and writing it for fun. So it's really selling. Yeah.
Well, what does that say to people who aspire also to write and publish a book? If you get yourself out there, you could find yourself in the top 10% of books sold.
Yeah, you got to work at it. Right?
Incredible, right?
Yeah, it is work. I enjoy doing it. I love my book, right? And it probably comes across. I did, for practice, write a previous book about the Panama Canal treaties. If someone said, come and present on that, I would be like, maybe. Do I really want to do that? But my backpack jacket surfboard, I love to go out there, and talk about it. I enjoy it. But you have to keep doing it in order to keep that momentum going.
Well, in the world of the podcast biz, the number out there that they say is if your episodes get 27 downloads in the first 7 days, you're in the top 50% of podcasts.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm in the top 50% of podcasts.
There you go. Yeah.
So it kind of tells you that you add a little bit of you've got to have a good product.
Yep.
But kind of reaching that mid-level is maybe, I don't want to say not as hard as it seems, but maybe it's not as intimidating.
Correct.
As you might think it is. Now, you are a great natural salesperson for your own book. And I'm not sure everyone out there has the...
Doesn't naturally go...
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point. And I found this with my publisher, who, of course, is speaking to different authors every day, that I'm not a typical author. Right? The skill sets that usually go with being, a good writer don't usually match two other things: good self-promotion and salesmanship, and two, business aspects. There are ways that I think about pushing the book and managing the book process that are clearly not typical at the publisher, because most of the people at the publisher have no commercial background. The CEO does, right? The guy running the place does, but most of the other people I work with, don't see things the same way as I do. So how you allocate your time and how things work has been, a big issue. And frankly, you're talking about podcasts, right? So I very consciously attempt to do podcasts that reach out of my comfort zone, right? And so I can get a different audience and expand the audience. But that being said, I probably turn down more podcasts.
Oh,
right?
Interesting. Tell me.
That feel a little bit more self-interested and commercial from their side.
Oh, interesting.
Right? They're working their own angle.
Right.
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 And so I had balance those things. But I did a podcast on the book from a woman in Hawaii who wanted to talk about the business aspects of the book. Yeah. It's not a business book. She was connected to my publisher, has a very successful podcast series, and I thought, no one knows me in Hawaii. And actually, the first books that we sold were out of bookstores on the west coast of America, and I'm like, how did that happen?
Does it have?
One in Scotland, and then I realized it probably came from the podcast. It probably were people who listened to the podcast.
Nice,
right? So you have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit to do that stuff, to spread the word.
Well, there's also the whole, adventure you had up and down the West Coast.
Yep.
That might have spread some interest, right?
Maybe,
right?
Yeah, maybe that helps.
Maybe that you have Surfboard in the and this great cover design, right?
Triggered some people.
Some people. So it's an interesting business. You also investigated the whole world of online Amazon sales. Yes. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So that's where the publisher really goes to work, right? Because that's a space they know. And they're in the business of selling books, right? And surprise, surprise, right? There's systematic ways of doing that, right? And that I would not be able to do on my own. And so there's a number of things that they've done. Amazon is where you sell books. Right? I'm a big supporter of independent bookstores, but you sell books across Amazon. And so how you work with Amazon is a critical aspect to make sure people see your book.
And what have you learned from that?
Yeah, so a number of things. The two areas where we've gone to work is that Amazon actually owns two online book reading clubs. One called Goodreads, which has literally millions, over 10 million, members to it, and NetGalley, which is also linked to Amazon, which has around 1 million members. So, these are people who receive free copies of a book with an obligation to provide reviews for a certain percentage of the books that they read. Right, so they commit to doing that, and so the publisher is then saying, okay, how do we get this book in front of that book club? And so they'll do the work to work out who reads this type of book. So then you have to define the book. We defined it in the genres of travel, in the genre of memoirs and biographies, and in the genre of humor. And then they go look for the people who read those type of books on an ongoing basis, and then they provide the marketing to get my book in front of them ahead of other books. Right? So it's just how you would advertise on Google, right? And there's ways to get it. There's ways to get it free of charge, higher up that list from using certain words, right, and certain triggers, right? You have to learn what those are. There's people who have those skill sets, and then you have to pay, right, to move up those scales, and you want to make sure you understand the audience you're aimed at, right? So that's stuff that, I can help point the publisher, but that's stuff that they have to do to help that. And so that's been, that has been the mechanism, largely how I've reached my non-network, right? The people who I don't know.
Yes.
And so that's been a very interesting experience for me to see as well.
How about getting into, say, the New York Times Book Review or I don't know if Washington Post has book reviews anymore, but those kind of establishment channels. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah,
and maybe it's not as important as
well.
it
I think
used to be.
I think that's the key aspect, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
boy, I would love to be interviewed by the New York Times. Don't get me wrong about my book. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as important, right? Big podcasts, big Amazon position, right? Enormously helpful these days in moving the book. I'll give you just kind of one example. We did a promotion on Amazon for the Kindle version. Right? I have a paperback, I have a Kindle, and I have an Audible book, all on Amazon. And we did a promotion at no expense to me.
Nice.
Right? Actually, Amazon takes the hit. They drop the price of my Kindle from $9.99 to 99 cents, right? To drive viewership to Amazon. Think about that, using my book to drive viewership to Amazon. It sounds a little bit backwards, but that's what they do with certain books. So I sold 326 Kindle books in 2 weeks after they did that.
Wow.
In 2 weeks. 14 days. And, and I would say of those 326, over 320 of those were to people I have never met, never spoken to, never seen.
So it is possible to get outside that group of friends, the ones that you thought would enjoy.
If they like the book.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not to be missed, right? The people generally won't pick things up that they don't expect to like.
Right.
So we've done enough to encourage them, right, with the subject matter. Going back to what you said earlier about how the editorial staff had been able to pull some of this stuff out of Graham's silly hitchhiking stories to resonate with people. And really my favorite takeaway for the whole book experience at this point is that the reviews from the people who don't know me are better than the ones from the people who do know me. That's not to say that those ones who do know me aren't bad, but I've had moving reviews. People, really touched me.
Wow.
From what they've written. I have well over 50 reviews now on Amazon. Over 90% of those are 5-star reviews. My second Amazon review was a 2-star review, but actually what they said I thought was okay, a little low on the number of stars. Since then, I think I've had 5 4-star reviews, and every other review has been a 5-star review. And as I say, the initial ones were from people I knew, but ever since then, the great majority of them have been from people I don't know, and the book is clearly resonating with them.
Yes.
With people who've never met me, never spoken to me, and they're taking things away from the book that weren't necessarily intentionally written.
When you're going out to, you said you're going to Dallas. How are you able to make those connections?
Yeah.
Are those business or friend connections that you're?
Yeah, personal. They're personal. So, and again, it's work, right? You have to make a decision you're going to do it. So, for instance, I'll tell you about Dallas. So, in the book, there's a significant chapter you'll know, but many other people won't, about my father's war experiences,
Right.
And him traveling across to the United States during the war in the Queen Mary, and going to train to fly out of an airstrip in a little town called Terrell, Texas, and the fact that we found a museum there to the British Air Force training cadets.
An
from that time.
amazing story in the book. Yes.
So guess what? I wanted to go and present in the museum.
Oh my gosh.
How cool would that be?
Oh, awesome.
Right?
Yes.
And so I've been there,
Yeah.
right? So I called them, I told them the story, and I said, what are the chances that I can come down there? I knew they did events from time to time. And I'd have to say the initial reaction was kind of, who is this guy and what is he saying? But I kept going, and they're now very excited. The marketing will be going out probably next week. In the Dallas area, it's about half an hour outside of Dallas, and the local bookstore, right? Because it's a museum,
Yes.
right? So I have to find a local bookstore who can bring the books along to be sold in the evening. So I look them up.
Yeah.
I call them up, and I say, "Hi, I'm an author," and we take it from there. And they're excited to come, and then I have to find someone to interview me. Right? And
You don't want me to come down and do that,
well,
right?
there's a limit to the expense budget for your travel. So there's a number of different things you have to pull together, and frankly, that's not what the publisher's going to do, right? That lands back on me,
Right.
because I'm really driving it. And again, I will know no one at that, apart from the executive director of the museum. There will be no one at that event that I have ever met before. This will be brand new to every one of them.
Is there some PR effort to tell the story, tell the story of your father's experience there and all of that? Is there a PR effort? And
so that will be
connecting
very
you?
much it'll look different than the previous marketing for other events, because it'll be very much focused on, this person has written a book. This is what the book is about, but it's got a big core chapter
Absolutely.
that's around our museum and actually the drugstore up the street. And so if you have any connection to those two places, you'll be fascinated.
Let's
so you
put
have
in
to angle the marketing, right?
Yeah, we have to put in a plug here for the book, because you would not believe the adventure, the coincidence, multi-generational of surrounding this story of Graham's father training as a Lancaster bomber in Terrell, Texas, and kind of jaw-dropping. I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that. It's absolutely jaw-dropping, and you really have to read this book. So
Absolutely.
there's another plug for you. Now you launched this book, and you were pretty much done with it, but you had already started on a second book. Let's talk about that for a minute, and how your experience with all of this may be impacting what your perspective on the second book.
Yeah, and actually, I originally approached the whole project with 3 books, was my intent, of which this is the first. And the reality is, not only has it delayed my second book, it's really changed everything I do, because it's not a full-time job working on the book. A book that took me 6 weeks to write. Right? In reality, the writing piece was a small part of this journey.
That's actually a good thing to know, because I think for a lot of people, writing the book is like, oh, it's finished, my magnum opus, and then you think that's it. But in fact,
well, it can be if that satisfies you.
Yeah.
Right. And then I found that I wanted to get it out there. When I initially wrote it, I thought I'd be satisfied, with that and a few friends. But then I think in particular, then more friends were interested in it. Well, that was good. I reconnected with friends. Mm-hmm. We talked about those times. That was nice. Yep. So I think I want more of that. Mm-hmm. And then people who didn't know me started to feedback, and I'm like, oh my goodness, right? They love this book. So I'm like, how can you not want more of that? And so, right, so it's fed itself.
Yeah,
it hasn't been, a plan that I've been executing, right? I'm moving along in the journey as we go along, but it has impacted, my other writing. I had another book that was, for all intents and purposes, about 85% done back in March of this year, and as of today, it is still about 85% done. and because what I found when I wrote the first one, you have to get yourself in the mood and the habit to write.
Yes.
Right? It's not something you can say, oh, it's Tuesday, I think I'll do some writing. That's been my experience, at least. And so I really haven't had uninterrupted time to get back into the mood of doing that.
You need to put your head in another place.
You do.
Right?
You do.
Let me just say something about what you were talking about, the success of the book. I think what people are also connecting to is the meta-narrative of the book, which is you had another life, you wrote this book, and now you're on a journey that a lot of us are really cheering you on, because we love to see someone be able to have a creative midlife, to pivot from a business career to being a successful author.
Yep.
And a lot of us love to see other people do that.
Yep.
And I think that's one reason why people are connecting, is that there is a larger narrative that's not necessarily in your book.
And I think, your podcast very much taps into that.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely true. It was very noticeable when I went to London, where there was a lot of my business friends from my time in London there, similar age to a little bit younger. So a lot of people looking at the end of their career and what do they do, and you could feel that sense of, oh my goodness, look what he's doing. You could say, there was certainly an aspect to it.
Possible, right?
Right?
Maybe no one can really follow your exact journey,
Correct.
But it shows that there is something possible at the end of a business career, say, or whatever that part of life. And we all know, and I keep harping on this idea that we have the new longevity, which is 65 used to really be, you might...
Just warming up, as I like to say.
Exactly.
Just warming up.
Exactly. And I also want to say you're a runner.
Yes.
And you're a competitive runner.
Yes.
And you are you finish races in like the top of your age group.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about.
Well,
that's also another interesting.
Yeah. So the second book,
Yes,
right? I mean,
go ahead.
I'll transition
Please.
neatly into the marketing phase. So the second book is about running, but it's as is my writing style. It's storytelling again. Mm-hmm. So it's called Faster Than You at 60. The incredible backstories of the world's fastest sprinters over 60. So I don't run. Most people of my age are doing 5Ks, fun runs, marathons maybe. So I don't do that. I'm no good at that. I run track, which is a little rarer. Mm-hmm. Right? Short distances. I happen to run 200 and 400 meters. There's a group of people who do that in this country, both locally, in New York, but also regionally, nationally, and internationally. I'm off to Mexico in 3 weeks' time to compete for the U.S. team. As one example, and what I found where the book comes from is that there's instinctively, well, how the hell are you doing that, Graham? At your age, how did you stumble into that situation? Right? I mean, it's an obvious question.
Right, sure.
I was not a runner as a young person.
Wow.
Right? Which is most people's first thought.
Yeah.
I took it up at...
You were too busy hitchhiking.
I was too busy hitchhiking. And I took it up at 56 years of age. And there's a number of reasons, which I won't go into now, about why I did that. And when I went to, last summer, when I went to a couple of large championship meets, I shared what I call my backstory. This is how I got back into this sport or into this sport at this age, because I think it's actually an interesting story. And then what played back to me 6 consecutive times were the person who I was speaking to felt comfortable to tell me their backstory. And all 6 of them, one after the other, over 2 meets, over a 3-week period, blew me away. They were all 10 times more interesting than mine. I was almost embarrassed that I told them my story. And so I just thought, oh my goodness, right, this is really good stuff. These are great stories. I've got to write this down.
Yeah, can you give us just briefly what some of those backstories are?
Yeah, so probably my favorite, because it's the last one I looked at. A 62-year-old woman brought up in the Soviet Union, brought up in an orphanage for abused children, right, in Lithuania, with stories, some of which I could not put in the book, frankly, who at almost 14 years of age, her gym teacher, a phys ed teacher, just noticed the way she moved in class and introduced her to a track and field coach, local track and field coach in Vilnius, Lithuania. At the time, they had to put her on a nutrition program. She was tall, and she, after 6 months of being on that nutrition program, she weighed 80 pounds. First time she ran, she said she literally thought her legs might break. They were so thin. Oh. She said her knees, a lovely phrase, her knees stuck out in all 4 directions.
Oh.
That's how thin she was.
Wow.
2 years later, she was the Soviet Union's longest long jumper and fastest hurdler as a schoolchild.
Wow.
And she traveled the world. She was put on the Soviet Olympic development team, given an apartment, fed properly, right? Traveled, Cuba, East Germany. Think about it. North Korea, as a 16 and 17-year-old girl with her background. And then she noticed, and her coach, that coach, by the way, when she was 14, is still her coach today.
Oh.
He's still in Vilnius, Lithuania. He's in his 90s, and she still leans on him for all her advice. Anyway, she noticed that her fellow colleagues on that development team, the other girls on the team, their voices were deepening, they were growing facial hair, and they were becoming very muscular. And her coach opted out, which is one hell of a decision.
Yeah.
Given the background that she had, which was literally nothing. And so she left the program.
Wow. So that she didn't have to be given the...
She never saw anything,
Yeah.
right? She saw the results. And they just decided, the two of them, that this was not for her. So let's fast forward. It's a long story. Let's fast forward, right? So today, she's a cleaning lady in Memphis, Tennessee. She cleans houses. She loves to clean houses. She learnt it in the orphanage. She said, I'm very good at it. She hitches, not like I used to hitchhike, but she gets rides to national meets, sometimes driving 10, 12, 14, 16 hours to get to a meet. She shares a room in an Airbnb, not sharing an Airbnb, but the room at an Airbnb, and often walks to get to the meet. She presently holds 8 world records. She is an unbelievable athlete.
Wow.
When you meet her, I actually interviewed her. I watched her compete. You can't help but go and watch her. I interviewed her for the book, but I actually hadn't stood with her in person. And when you stand with her in person, she gives off like this incredible aura of a great athlete. Her posture is perfect, and she looks like she could just float as she walks away from you. And there's one story. As I say, what is my story in comparison to this, right? It's nothing. Unbelievable stories. And I've got, 20 of them. And so that's one of my favorites, and I think they're just a little bit like backpack, jacket, surfboard. There's a story, they're interesting. In some cases they're funny, and sometimes they're moving. But I think there's also massive learnings. Right, they're very formative experiences that people can learn from by reading it. It also, again, like backpack, jacket, surfboard, I found it gives a real microcosm of America in the 1970s and 80s, when most of these people, right? So I go back into their background to find, the first story is about someone in the Soviet Union, but I have, 7 African Americans, in those stories, and their backgrounds as their opportunities. When they were starting out on their journey, athletic journey, is interesting. Right?
How do you think your background or your experience as a runner has allowed you to gain their trust, entry to their backgrounds, their history, their story, and also how you might be able to portray, what's involved in running, especially at this age.
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult to do without understanding what goes into being a competitive athlete, in particular, competitive runner. So I think that's a minimum requirement. Understand how they would have trained, facilities, coaching, to just understand what you'd have to do. And I think also, all these people are people I've got to know. And so you have to get to know them in order for them to tell you that kind of story.
It's not like being a sports journalist where you try to sit down with someone and it sounds like what you have is something that very few people would probably be able to even recognize. Oh, that person has a great story.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point, Betsy. Right. So there's a lot of magazine articles about these people. Right? They just won this championship, and they're from this town, and they were in the military. There's one other thing about them that you'll get in the storyline. Yep. And so when I've interviewed them, one of the first things I always have to say, it's not a magazine article, right? This is not a 200 or 300 word essay, right? I'm writing 3,000 words roughly, depending on the person, the story. Some go to 5,000, to get further in. And even for my reading audience, because of course I'm in marketing, I think about the reading audience. Of course, there's a lot of athletes who know these people, and they'll know a little something about them. They won't know a lot about them. Everyone will know that woman grew up in the Soviet Union. And everyone knows that woman is an awesome athlete. I bet you, even 1% of the other athletes don't know how she got from the Soviet Union to the United States. So it's adding that flavor.
Yeah.
And again, similar to Backpack, it'll network neatly in amongst the runners. There's a natural audience for it.
Sure.
But the real fun will be to get it out to non-runners, not even people who aspire to run, but actually for the stories, the personal stories that people can link them to. And they don't have to be athletes.
Some of these sound like potential movie scripts. You know what I mean?
We do. We have had we have had conversations about a Netflix series for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Graham, we could talk for hours, and I think I'm going to leave it here and leave my audience hanging, waiting for you to finish.
Episode 4.
And, this has just been an inspiring journey to watch you, from your, I'm going to write a book, and then to see it come out and to help with that first initial launch, which is on its own separate video. And again, the meta story of what is possible when, you bring not only your natural talents, your intelligence, and you're figuring this out. And I think that's really something that a lot of us, when we apply ourselves to that second journey, bringing your life experience and your network and all of that, shows what's possible. And I just want to thank you so much for being part of that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And I'm so excited for your next journey. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning into Your Creative Midlife. I'd love to know if you are doing something creative in your midlife. Please reach out to me at yourcreativemidlife.com. And if you liked us, please give us a thumbs up and leave a review. Thanks again. I'm Betsy Bush.